Hi everyone, and welcome to Royals at the Ranch for Thursday, April 28th, 2022. I'm Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary. I have 3 stories for you this week, and 2 of them are updates about Royals that have already been here at the ranch, and we're going to start with Betty. If you will remember, Betty was relinquished to Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary back in February of this year, so she's been here a couple of months. We were told by her previous humans that in the over 20 years that they've cared for her and had her, she's never had a good shed, that they have always had to help her during her ecdysis cycle, and they usually soaked her in water. This is the first shed that she's attempted since she's been here. And since she's been here, she's been given a humid hide. But I didn't give her that until she'd already been here about a month. I added this cardboard box, I added this shelf, I added a humid hide to the rock cave and the other simple things that she arrived with. And even though she'd been in the humid hide and using it extensively for about a month, it has damp sphagnum moss in it, she still is having a really bad experience with this ecdysis cycle. So it's definitely something that we're going to have to investigate further. I'm going to change her environmental parameters since she arrived here. However, we probably will get her into the vet to do some blood work because our vet recommends if one of our snakes has 2 or 3 poor sheds in a row that we just do some general blood work to make sure there's nothing going on. So what I usually do instead of soaking the snakes, I usually get a warm wash rag and I rub it along the body and I grip pretty firmly and I just try to simulate that shed coming off as it would come off if the snake was rubbing against something. And I use my hands and the warm wash rag to have that shed come off in a more natural fashion than forcing the snake to soak in water. Now, I've had some snakes that absolutely hate being touched by water of any kind, and I've had other snakes that like to swim, and then most of them are somewhere in between where they'll tolerate water, but they maybe wouldn't necessarily get in it on their own. And I'm just learning Betty's behavior and her personality, so I didn't know what she thought about the water. She seemed okay the few times that she ended up partially submerged in her water bowl as I was taking her in and out and giving her breaks in between working with her. Most of the really tough stuck shed was on her face and head and her eye caps, and she really did not like her head being touched or messed with. So I was getting just little pieces off at a time, and then I was giving her a break. And a few times during those breaks, she ended up partially submerged in her water, and she really didn't seem to mind that. So maybe if we have another issue with shedding in the future, I will make a bath for her and see if she prefers the soaking to me using the wet washcloth. But ultimately, I was able to get the eye caps off and all of her shed off, and I refreshed her humid hide. And that is where I left her when we were all finished for this evening. And I hope that she's more comfortable now and that once she's more settled in here to these new parameters that we have within her habitat, that she'll have a good shed the next time. For our second story this week, I'm going to update you about Boba Fett. He's one of our Python Regis that arrived in March of this year. He is phenomenally active. He is beautiful. He's very personable and friendly for a snake. He actually seeks time out of his enclosure and he seeks engagement with people sometimes. He has moved into a different enclosure. This is my Morelia Bredli Ronin, who died about a week ago, and it's been very upsetting for me to see his empty enclosure on my desk. However, I felt really uncomfortable with putting another Morelia Bredli in his enclosure. I just wasn't sure what to do about the way I was feeling about the empty enclosure. And Boba Fett constantly wanted out of his other enclosure, and he wanted out nightly to roam. And his other enclosure was a 20-gallon tank. And Ronin's enclosure is larger. It's 3 by 18 by 18. I decided that since Boba Fett seemed to share such a spirit of adventure and exploration and curiosity that Ronan had, that I felt good about putting Boba Fett in Ronan's enclosure. And so I cleaned Ronan's enclosure all out. I put some of Ronan's old furnishings back in and then added all of Boba Fett's furnishings in. Plus I added more clutter since he's a different species of snake. Royal pythons in general just seem to feel more comfortable if they have more clutter, more hiding places. And so I added all that for him. And he's been in Ronan's enclosure a few days. I do feel okay about it. I've been working at my desk and I enjoy seeing Boba Fett there. And it's actually a happy feeling. I feel like if I had put another snake of the same species in there, another Morelia Bredli, that it just would have made me sad. It would have been too painful. It would have been too much of a reminder of Ronan passing away. But I feel really happy to look up and see Boba Fett in the enclosure. I am hoping that the added space will make him want out less, because I've really made it complex for him and there's lots and lots for him to do. However, so far, even though he is utilizing all the space in the enclosure and he doesn't seem distressed in there at all, he still wants out quite often, and he just explores around my computer. He explores around my desk. He seems to like to climb cords and shimmy up and down cords. I'm not really sure what his motivation is, unless he just finds it very reinforcing to have the freedom, and maybe he really enjoys the exercise. But he is doing okay in the new enclosure. He has been utilizing the climbing opportunities. He's been sleeping all day, and then he wakes up around sunset, explores a little bit in a relaxed fashion around the enclosure, and then he's been coming to the doors and giving me signals that if I open the doors, he would come out, which he does when I open the doors. So Boba Fett is just a really neat little royal python, and he was hatched on September 11th, 2021. I'll be curious as he ages, as he gets bigger, as he gets older, if he will maintain the activity level and the curiosity that he has now. Our third and final story for this week is the story of Solera. It's actually just an introduction to Solera, who is a female Python Regis who was hatched on August 25th, 2021. And she came from a reptile expo in New Hampshire. How did this happen? How is it that she came to be in Colorado? Well, that's her story, but her story revolves around a training and behavior project that I'm doing in cooperation with Danielle Anise of Danielle Anise Fine Arts, who has made some of my snake training targets for me. And Danielle is also a dog trainer, and she also rides horses. So we have a lot in common. We wanted to work together on a project to try to help people when they were visiting reptile expos, so that they would know what to look for as far as behavior and temperament in a potential snake or other reptile, how to go about assessing that in that in-person live situation at a reptile show or expo, how to talk to the vendors and breeders, and how to determine if a vendor is reputable, what questions to ask the breeders. So what we did via the virtual magic of Zoom, Danielle visited a reptile expo, and while she was there, through her phone, either through a phone call or text or FaceTime, I virtually helped her, and we assessed some snakes there. We then decided on this one. She took Solera home, and then she started training Solera and doing some behavior things, some behavior work with Solera. So I did some virtual coaching sessions with Danielle and Solera, and then we have been keeping in touch almost daily about what's going on with Solera's behavior, temperament assessments, feeding, training, habitat, enrichment items, all sorts of things like that. And then Danielle and I went through the process of learning how to ship reptiles together. So that's another story that we would like to share with you to get Solera here to Colorado. So Solera made a journey after 4 months with Danielle in New Hampshire out here to Colorado, where she's going to continue her training and behavior work with us, and where Danielle and I are going to start telling you the story of our journey with Solera together. Now, what we need from you is your questions. I would like you to contact me at behavioreducation.org through LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or you can comment here on YouTube, or you can email me at behavioreducationllc@gmail.com. And let me know what questions or what concerns for discussion that you have about visiting a reptile expo, choosing the correct animal that will fit your family and lifestyle at a reptile expo, assessing the health of animals at a reptile expo, assessing their behavior, and assessing the breeders and vendors that you're working with. Any questions related to all of that? This isn't going to be a series that we're doing about purchasing reptiles online or through a private one-on-one situation. We specifically are going to orient this around visiting a reptile expo and getting your first snake or an additional snake or other reptile there. So please send us your questions so that we know when we're creating this video series where to go with it. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoy this footage of Solera as she enters her habitat in Colorado for the first time after spending 4 months with Danielle in New Hampshire in a similarly furnished habitat. And until next time, everybody, please remember to always be kind and love your animals.